spaces, which is what I've just explained. I need safe people. Now, the first, and I'll get at the end, I'll get to where this is limited in sport, and it's a really big concern for me at the moment. But let's just start with where we can go and then go backwards to where the gaps are that need to be filled. So in order to, in my gym, in order for me to employ a coach, they have to have a once-off criminal record check. And that is mainly for people that are older. You know, as you can see, I'm sort of in my sort of early 20s, not so much. I'm in my early 50s. And as a result, what you have in my context is that I may have committed an offense prior to the new legislation, which is the sexual offences legislation and the Children's Act. And I may have an prior to those acts coming into effect, which means I will not be on the sex offender register or the child protection register. And as a result, I want a once-off criminal check. Now, the hesitancy for people to get criminal checks is, what if I've got a criminal record and then it destroys my career? Well, you have to make it overt that it is not all criminal offenses that exclude you working from children. So, for example, if you have a shoplifting offense, does that mean that you can't work with children? Well, it might be the reason I employ you, because you are someone who was in conflict with the law, who can warn children against what it is like to be a young person who takes things that don't belong to them and ends up in conflict with the law. So in fact, sort of in our sister organizations in Cape Town, they would specifically hire people with criminal records who have been in prison to warn young people through the boxing around the fact that if you carry on along this sort of drug path and the gang path, this is where you'll end up, and it's a warning against it. So having a criminal record does not exclude you from working with children, but it has to be made quite overt and quite specific. The two other registers, the one is the sex offender register. That register is relatively easy to access. There's many organizations out there at the moment who offer these checks. They obviously come at a fee because there's technology involved. What we do is we hire a company that come to us, and they take all of our fingerprints, they send away our IDs and our documents, and then they do the checks for us. So it's done completely independently of us, and they issue us with certificates against that sex offender register. Now, that register is in terms of the Sexual Offences Act, and that register is of people who have been convicted of sexual offences against children and people with adults with cognitive impairments, whether those are sort of permanent or temporary, but it's against disabled people. It currently doesn't include sexual offences against adults, but the criminal check will include sexual offences against adults. So that's the sex offender register. The other register, which is the one that is broader but is more complex, is the child protection register. Now, that register is in terms of the Children's Act, and that register is a register of people who are considered unsuitable to work with children. So in that instance, you fill out a Form 29 that is to be filled out by the employer, and the employee fills out a Form 30. So the employer has to be mandated by their board, their SGB, or if you are a government school, by the department, to check your staff against that particular register. And what that register essentially does is it has a list of people who are considered unsuitable to work with children. Now, in simplistic terms, at the moment, as far as I understand, is the child protection register and the sex offender register names are largely the same people. Because if you are on the sex offender register, you are automatically on the child protection register. And there are other reasons you can end up on the child protection register, like I know SACE. If there's a section of the Employment of Educators Act or the SACE Code of Conduct, if there's a sexual transgression that someone is found guilty of in a labor hearing or a SACE hearing, they would also send those names up to the Child Protection Register, because it's a formal legal process that has found them guilty of something that makes them unsuitable to work with children. Now, unfortunately, that register is not working fantastically. And it has taken us the last time we sent our documents up, it actually came back in 3 months. whereas the sex offender register you get back in like 10 days or 2 weeks. But it took about 3 months. And some people have told me it takes as long as 6 and 9 months because of COVID. But the point is that you do it. And the point is that the people who apply for jobs with me at the moment need to have done this, or at least showed me that they have submitted those documents. What we do is we courier them. We make sure that there's a waybill number so we can track the documents, because they tend to get lost. Okay, so that's the context of people who are not allowed to work with children. At the end, I will be moving more on to how we ensure that we are employing the correct people. So this is again part of that negative duty. And if coaches apply to me without these documents on their CV, and another one which I'll mention at the end, I won't even look at their CV.